These scandals have been going on in Ireland now for about 16 years or more, and they haven't been dealt with. And every day the Church shames itself further and exposes its failures and exposes its ongoing inability to understand its responsibility, to be honest, to tell the truth, to do what's right.
It's St Patrick's Day in the Irish town of Wexford, and the merrymaking is in full swing. Originally a Catholic rite for the Holy Saint of Ireland, the day is now celebrated as a national holiday. Yet, in an age where stories of gross clerical abuse regularly hit the headlines, even this ancient seat of Catholicism is seething.
I feel very, very sad about the condition of the church. You know, because there is now that element of doubt. When you were talking to a priest, sometimes you think, you know, things you shouldn't be thinking when you're talking to a priest. You know, so there's that element of doubt.
It all started in the Diocese of Ferns, when Colm O'Gorman made a statement to the police. As a boy, he had been raped by a priest for years. In 1995, he finally broke the silence.
When I reported it to the police, I thought it was just me. I thought that he had did this to me and that was it, but I was worried he might do it to somebody else. But very quickly, within weeks, 5 other men who were boys at the time that they were abused and raped by him came forward. And within months, I started to hear suggestions that the church had known about him. Very quickly, it became clear that the Vatican also had received complaints about the priest who abused me. And then it seemed obvious that if we wanted to get to the truth, we had to go to the Vatican. So therefore, it made sense to sue the Pope. So by 1998, that had become clear that that was the thing to do. The first time I considered it, it seemed preposterous. It seemed ridiculous. Sue the Pope. I mean, this is crazy. But the truth said that this was the right thing to do. The questions that needed to be answered said, well, we need to ask these questions and find out the answers.
And finally, Colm got answers. His case led to the introduction of the Ferns Inquiry, the first investigation of clerical abuse performed by the Irish government. Slowly but steadily, more and more cases were exposed, and it became clear that the Church was aware of the vast majority. After years and years of legal action, Colm received compensation, but it was the questioning attitude that resulted from his case which was to be his legacy. People were arrested, bishops forced to resign, and the man who raped Colm was exposed as a notorious paedophile. He later committed suicide in prison.
I was one of the investigators in the Ferns Inquiry. I interviewed a number of the clerical abusers here in Wexford. I handed over information that never came to light in the inquiry because for legal reasons they were not able to bring that information to light, which bothered me a great deal.
Teacher and child protection expert Shane Dunphy was outraged at what he saw as the Church's systematic refusal to tell the truth. And when the Diocese of Ferns asked local parishioners to foot the bill for the inquiry, he could no longer keep his feelings to himself.
I just couldn't believe it. My sense of outrage was stirred up to such an extent that I couldn't really remain quiet. So I asked the Irish Independent if I could write a piece just kind of, I suppose, responding to that as someone who'd grown up in the area and who had seen some of the awful things that had happened.
Shane grew up in a very religious family. Though he has never been abused himself, the recent exposures have affected him deeply.
I did know many of my friends were sexually abused. For example, one of the years where I went to school, we were actually schooled in the local church, in a room in the local church. One of the priests came in and handpicked a group of boys to serve, to assist him at Mass. And one of these boys would come back every day after he'd served Mass in tears. And he would come into the room crying, really upset, and sit at the back of the room. And I just assumed he must have not been a very skilled altar server and he got slapped or given out to. But it went on for the whole year that we were there, and the teacher never asked him, and somehow none of us ever asked him either. And then many years later I discovered when that particular priest was prosecuted as a clerical abuser that he must have been sexually abusing this boy. And that made me feel appalling when I realised that none of us had ever said a word.
The Catholic Church in Ireland has always been almighty, and with priests orchestrating daily life, from boarding schools and orphanages to hospitals, it was years before the Fern Inquiry was able to provide a clear picture of the abuse. To date, compensation has been paid to 12,000 people, but every day new confessions come from old victims.
The man who happened to be a priest, who for 3 years nearly sexually assaulted and raped me, is responsible for his individual actions himself. So I don't blame the Pope or a bishop for the fact that this man chose to do these things. But what I do hold them responsible for, and what they need to accept responsibility for, is the fact that they permitted him to, that they empowered him to have access to children, and they failed to respond to complaints or concerns or pleas from his victims, from his parishioners, and from other people who were concerned about his conduct. The Vatican knew that there were concerns. If you put together, and chose not to do anything. And if you put together the fact that they knew these concerns existed with the fact that the bishops knew he had assaulted children before he was ordained, all they had to do was ask the question. All they had to do was use the information that they had available to them and prevent him from harming others. And they didn't. And they didn't not because they didn't understand or because they didn't know that such things were possible. They didn't because they knew that if this ever came out, it would damage their reputation and it would cost them money. So in the interests of their wealth, their position, their power, their money, they chose to ignore this and allow me and countless other children to be raped and abused, and they devastated lives.
The Catholic Church in Ireland has closed a deal with the Irish government. A large part of the clerical abuse claim is now being paid by the taxpayers, much to the anger of solicitor Vincent Shannon, who has pled for a lot of the victims' cases.
The Irish government made a huge mistake. They said to the church authorities a couple of years ago, we will put a cap or a limit on the amount of money you have to pay. And I think the amount was 120 million. Now they find the amount has risen to €1 billion, and the church only has to pay about a tenth of that. So people are saying, why is the taxpayer paying for the abuse of the religious?
Today, Shannon warns victims in other countries of the ways in which the church is able to protect itself, citing how the Catholic Church withheld important documents from the investigators.
The church was refusing to release the records. They said they were secret, and under canon law they can't reveal them. So it took 6 years for us to get the files from the church.
He believes that the government, and not the church, should install a commission to investigate clerical abuse, along with a rigid policy on the treatment of victims.
I would suggest that the government should set up an independent commission with lawyers and medical experts, and they should decide the level of compensation for each person.
Believe me, the church will not tell the truth. The church will not share documents. The church will not cooperate fully with inquiries. It will promise that it will. It will promise to put in place independent inquiries. How can the Catholic Church put in place an independent inquiry into itself? This is a nonsense. Dutch politicians must speak, but more importantly than speaking, they must act. They must investigate. They must establish the truth. Believe me, there was in Dutch dioceses, just like there were in Irish dioceses and in American dioceses and Catholic dioceses across the world, there were deliberate, cold, clinical decisions made to cover up these crimes, to swear victims to secrecy, and to prevent the crimes from being reported to the police.
I have to tell you, Esther, I miss the church. That's a strange thing to admit, but I really do miss the church. I miss the magic of it. I miss the sense of togetherness. I miss the ritual of prayer kind of with my community. And I miss that a great deal, and I feel very angry that they have taken that away, not just from me, but from many other right-minded people.
If I'm filling out a form for a job, if I was to, and they'd say religion, Roman Catholic would probably be not the thing to put down. That's how bad I feel about it.